Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, thank you for joining me as we take this Saturday morning to talk about the long-lost ritual that was Saturday morning cartoons, and as we discuss some of our favorites and talk a little bit about cartooning and art. And if you're joining us for the first time, that's what we do here every Saturday morning on Saturday Morning Cartooning. We discuss the classics and some of the most important intellectual debate of our time. Which Superman cartoon was the best? Now, before we get into today's highly controversial debate and conversation, I want to talk about, a little pre-roll here. And if you like what we're doing here, or what I'm doing here, maybe you go to patreon.com/Destiny Comics and, you support us there. You get to see things early. You get to check out some of the stuff. You get original art mailed to your house. You get our books mailed directly to you. So, there's all kinds of goodies and things right there from our Patreon. If you were so inclined to just want to buy some of our books, you can do that directly from my website, the link down below. You can just buy copies of Flatfoot McGee or Terrifyingly Gruesome Tales of Horror or the 8-Bit Pulp short story anthologies. Any number of books are available, and if you buy them from me, they come signed. Versus, if you were to purchase them on Amazon or from a third-party vendor. Maybe you would like to follow us on the Instagrams and Facebooks. Links are down below. Also, hey, like, subscribe. Is the bell still a thing? Do you got to ring the bell? I don't remember. YouTube just keeps changing on me. And finally, maybe you go to webtoon.com and you check out my webcomic, Galahad the Fallen. It is about knights in shining armor. Galahad, after the fall of Camelot, has decided to go on a revenge quest to hunt down his father and murder Lancelot in revenge for the fall of Camelot. This is a revenge quest set amongst the mythical England of King Arthur, and plenty of knights and chivalry, and chaos will ensue. So, if you are a fan of knights in shining armor and medieval fantasy, maybe you want to check out Galahad the Fallen, available on webtoon.com or in the Webtoon app. With that said, we're going to jump right into the discussion of Superman. I have always lived in a world with Superman. I will never know what it would have been like to be a kid in 1938 and open that Action comic books for the first time and to, literally have my world changed. I will never know what that was like. I have always lived in a post-Superman world. Every night as a small child, to get me to go to sleep, my mom would play the Christopher Reeve Superman movie on VHS. And I don't remember this, but there's something that always just felt very cool knowing that as a small child every night I went to bed knowing Superman was out there and was going to save the world. So it just felt, as a small child, that reassurance of Superman is going to take care of the problems bigger than me. I love that idea. And I also love the idea that my mom might have pre-programmed me to be a nerd too, with the Christopher Reeve Superman movie. But yes, my whole life I have known of Superman and the myth that is Superman. This character has meant the world to me at different times. He has inspired me. He has given me hope. What a lot of people get wrong about Superman is it's not wish fulfillment about wouldn't it be neat to have power or strength or all these incredible things. The real wish fulfillment in Superman is, what if a good man had power? Superman in Action Comics #1, he stops a wrongful execution. He saves a woman from her abusive husband. He deals with a corrupt landlord. Like, these are real heavy issues for a comic book, and Superman's taken them on. He's never shied away from the problems of the era. And Superman is this beautiful, construct of hope. Even in the face of monstrous evil. He's the guy who's going to do the right thing because it's the right thing. And it's beautiful. Like right now I'm reading Action Comics, and for the first time in a long time, that's the book that I'm reading each month is Action Comics. And it's nice to just get this little boost every month of, we're going to be okay. In this turbulent time when the world seems to be falling apart, I feel when I read Superman Action Comics, I feel like we can get through it. Like this is... it refuels my optimism for the future. And it's one of those reasons why I still read Superman, even now as an adult. It just makes me feel good. With that said, let's jump into the Saturday morning of it all. Of course, we have to talk about the Max Fleischer Superman cartoon. These shorts were produced by Fleischer Animation. When DC originally approached them about doing these Superman cartoons, they didn't want to do them. They said it was just, they legit did not want to do a Superman cartoon. They were the creators and produced Popeye and Betty Boop, and their schedule was already pretty full. They didn't want to take on something like Superman, so they highballed them. They quoted him a ridiculously high number. They quoted him $50,000 for the first episode and $30,000 for every other episode, everyone after that. And that's in 1941. According to this inflation calculator, $50,000 in 1941 would be $1,126,492. So yeah, like, I mean, these shorts were incredibly expensive to produce. And they didn't want to do it, and basically DC came back and said, yeah, okay, we'll pay. And you can see every single penny in these Superman shorts. They are the most beautiful, elegant, well-produced spectacles of animation. They set the standard, they set the bar of not only just Superman, but action animation in general. They're gorgeous, they're beautiful. If you ever get the chance to see them, because sometimes you watch a muddled version. A few years ago, they came out with a Blu-ray, and the color correction is incredible. These are some of the best animated shorts ever produced, period. I would even say today that this is still the gold standard of Superman animation. It's hard not to, think of the Fleischer cartoons when you think of just how impressive and how amazing, some of these cartoons are. They are from 1941. There's a couple that have racial stereotypes, and some of those don't hold up. But hey, some of the comic books from 1941 don't hold up. You're dealing with history at that point. The values of the past are not the same as the values of today. I'm sorry. This was culturally accepted at that time. Was it wrong then? Probably, but it was culturally accepted. And so if you're going to watch media from the past, you have to realize you're going to brush up against this from time to time. And I love Golden Age media, and I brush up against it. Marx Brothers are some of my favorite comedians in all of history, and there's a couple of movies where they're doing blackface. It's sad, but it was culturally accepted at the time. Not to give it a pass, but standards change. With that said, the Fleischer animated cartoons are some of the most brilliant and well-rendered and well-illustrated cartoons ever produced. I have a beautiful Fleischer Superman statue on the top of my desk. And it's just absolutely gorgeous. So, I mean, I guess we need to, I love that classic Fleischer Studios animation. It's so beautiful. It's so stylized. It's absolutely gorgeous. But moving forward in the history of Saturday morning cartoons, I don't know which came first. I recently found out about the Ruby Spears Superman cartoon. Now, Ruby Spears, founded by Joe Ruby and Ken Spears in, they founded in 1977. It wasn't an animation company I'd really was all that familiar with. It was just a couple of years ago they put out the Superman short series on DVD, and I was like, what is this? And it's clearly inspired by the Christopher Reeves Superman cartoon. It is this beautiful mix of the Christopher Reeves movie and the comic books at the time. It is heavily inspired by 70s Superman. Everyone is in that their 70s designs. I fell in love with the series. The animation is crisp. It is clean. It is very well choreographed as far as the action and you know, the opening sequence is, you know, very much a G.I. Joe action sequence with Superman. They did you'd get one longer story, and then at the end you'd get a shorter, like, just history of Superman, kind of like, almost like in the comics when you get like a backup story. You'd get like a backup, you know, little mini adventure in the Ken Spears Superman cartoon. It really reminds me of like the Peter Pan cartoon that came out in the 90s. Just looking online, I guess they coincided the Ruby Spear Enterprise cartoon with the Superman 50th anniversary. So this came out like the same time as Superman for All Seasons. And it's really well animated. It's it's classic Superman in a way that, like, the Super Friends, when they would do Superman, they just kind of missed the mark. He was a little bit flatter. He was a little bit like, you know, there's a trope, especially in Justice League, like, oh, if we take out Superman early, then it really shows that the villain's a threat. But, you know, the Ruby Spear Superman show was really well done and ahead of its time. I haven't seen every episode, but I did get the box set, at least for season 1. Let's see, episodes. There might only be one season, but they're just really good, like, classic sci-fi, classic Superman shorts. It's the DVD's 2 discs, 13 episodes. If you can still find it or buy it digitally, I recommend it because they're worth a rewatch, and they're these beautiful time capsules of, like, where the Flesher Superman is this distilled version of Superman from the 40s, of, like, this is, you know, a very quiet man who jumps into action and saves the day. Well, the Ruby Spear Superman is much more that, you know, like, hey, Clark's a well-rounded guy, and, you know, him and Jimmy are pals, and you know, it goes back to the George Reeve of it all, like, gee, Miss Lane, Superman's great, but I really wish Clark was here. You know, it's a much more well-rounded cast as we go on these, you know, high-end adventures with Superman, and, you know, you get these great exaggerated moments where Clark has to faint, you know, to hide his secret identity, or, you know, he falls in the water and Superman can come out and do his thing. And, you know, Lois Lane is very much a proactive part of these adventures. And it's just a beautiful time capsule. Like I said, if you've never seen the Ruby Spears Superman, give it a check. You know, I didn't know it existed until they released the DVD a couple of years ago. So I did not watch this when it was originally coming out at all. Marv Wolfman is one of the head writers. You know, Gail Kane worked on this, on the character designs. Like, this is perfect Superman comic. It's 70s comic books distilled perfectly. It's just this well preserved piece of history, and I'm glad, you know, that we get that we still have this, because, you know, when a company goes under, sometimes those assets are lost forever. So you know, I'm glad that the Superman series was preserved, because I don't know if any of all the Ruby Spears stuff. Oh, it says they also did the Plastic Man series, which is, it's okay. Again, it's worth, you know, it's worth taking a look. Oh, they did the Police Academy cartoon, because we really needed that. You know, like, I'm glad this animation company was around. It's sad to know that it's been defunct for almost 30 years, because they did produce some really quality stuff there for a while. They were the ones behind the Rambo cartoon, which will be its own thing for a future episode. Yeah, it's they, you know, I'm glad that we had more stuff, because, you know, the Hanna-Barbera Superman stuff is just so flat and so worried about being kids safe, that I'm glad we got a really interesting Superman cartoon before the 90s. With that said, you know, we have to talk about Superman the Animated Series. Superman the Animated Series ran from 96 to 2000. It was it's probably my favorite version of Superman. It's in that, you know, DC animated universe where it crosses over with, you know, Batman Beyond, Justice League, you know, all those series. You know, it has the first the 3-part crossover, World's Finest, but when Superman and Batman finally cross over. And this is just a weird pet peeve of mine. If you're going to do a crossover with another series, on your DVD box set, have those episodes available from the other series. Like, if I buy the Batman box set from season 4, it includes that 3-part crossover. If I buy the Superman box set, it has Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, thank you for your time. Galahad the Fallen is a new webcomic available exclusively on webtoons.com. Galahad the Fallen follows the adventures of Sir Galahad after the fall of Camelot. In the ashes of Camelot, Galahad decides to take up the last and final quest any knight can do: get vengeance for his king. he is going to hunt down the man responsible for the fall of Camelot, Sir Lancelot, not only a noble knight himself, but also Galahad's father. Join us on webtoon.com as the exciting adventure of Galahad the Fallen unfolds exclusively in this new webcomic. As those 3 episodes, if you were to go online and buy the Magnum P.I. Murder, She Wrote crossover, you only get 1 episode of the crossover. You still have to go and buy a box set of Murder, She Wrote to get the 2nd episode. Right? Like, that's just unfair. Like, if you're putting together the box set, put in the effort, contact that other company, see if you can't, like, work out a deal. Be like, well, hey, you know, our guy Magnum PI's in your episode. Maybe, you know, and just do a fair trade. Like, there's no reason why both episodes shouldn't be on the Murder, She Wrote box set, and both episodes shouldn't be on the Magnum PI box set. This is just a weird tangent and a weird, like, old angry man thing that I'm still weirdly kind of angry about, because it took, you know, my wife over a decade to finally see the first episode in that crossover, because she had the Murder, She Wrote box set but didn't have the Magnum PI box set. And it's one of the best and one of the worst crossovers of all time because of continuity issues. It's not good. With that said, you know, Superman the Animated Series is, maybe because it's only 3 seasons, it's the one I go back to the most. Like, I've done more rewatches of Superman than I have of, like, Batman the Animated Series. Batman the Animated Series feels like a commitment, whereas Superman's like, no, I can sit this down and you know, and you know, there's 3 seasons, and I can sit through and get through all 54 episodes in a fairly quick viewing. The episodes I go back to the most are the 2-part Main Man Lobo crossover, where they do Lobo. And then the late great Mr. Kent is by far one of the best Superman stories ever told. It is I'm not going to give it away, but if you haven't watched it in a long time, it is a Clark Kent episode where he is trying to help a man on death row who's been wrongfully accused, and Clark Kent discovers the evidence his attorney was too lazy to even try to find. Sometimes those, you know, the cheapest attorney's going to be the cheapest attorney. So that was a lesson I learned pretty early on from Saturday morning cartoons. So it's just a really good Clark Kent Superman, you know, storyline. I absolutely love it. Again, there's only 3 seasons, 54 episodes. Do yourself a favor, just watch them all. They're brilliant. Tim Daly is kind of my Superman. I know because of scheduling they replaced him for Justice League, but Tim Daly was such a beautiful voice for Superman, and since I rewatch this series more often than Justice League, he's kind of the one of the voices I hear in my head when reading Superman. With that said, the sketch I'm doing, the illustration here, yes, as much as I'm talking about my love for the Flesher stuff, as much as I'm talking about my love for the Ruby Spears Superman, as much as I'm talking about how much I really love the Bruce Timm 90s Superman the Animated Series, I love drawing George Reeves. There's something beautiful about the way he carried himself. He had that broad chest. I'm definitely straight up doing George Reeves. I am doing Jack Larson's Jimmy Olsen, and I'm doing Noel Neal's Lois Lane. I absolutely loved that series. There's, a while back, DC was doing Batman 66, where they were just straight up doing the more adventures in the style of Batman 66 comic line. They were doing Wonder Woman 77, which is, again, straight up more adventures with, our Linda Carter Wonder Woman. I always thought the third series in that line should have been Superman 52. Do it in black and white. Do George Reeves. Do it, because of the budgetary constraints. His Superman wasn't able to just power his way through everything. He had to think things through, but also George Reeves' Superman fought like one robot in one episode. Like, the sci-fi elements in the Adventures of Superman were very tamped down just because of budgetary constraints. It happens with every Superman series up until you get to Smallville, because for the first time, computer effects were cheap enough for television.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Special effects were cheap enough for television. So Smallville really becomes the benefactor of no, this is the first Superman show where we get to do some of these really cool, science fiction concepts, and get to do some of these really cool, crazy villain fights but with that said, my heart always goes out to George Reeves. If you've ever read the first trade of Flatfoot McGee, I'm straight up just riffing on the tragedy and the death of George Reeves. It was heavily inspired by the death of George Reeves. Dean, I've drawn every version of Superman you can draw over the years. There's something a little bit magical about drawing George Reeves. There's still a little bit of a twinkle in his eye. I love that version of that character. And it's really cool that Jack Larson and Noel Neal would come back for Superman Returns, or some of these every once in a while he would show up in as just a nice cameo or a nod to no, we recognize the history of these characters, and we celebrate the history of those actors. And again, I absolutely love these characters, especially Jimmy Olsen. If you've ever seen Batman v Superman, about 12 minutes into that movie, Jimmy Olsen gets executed it's a blink and you miss it. Most people who saw the movie didn't even know it was Jimmy Olsen. He's a military photographer in Zack Snyder's world. He had the name badge and a camera. That is when I turned off the movie. And from that moment on, I have never watched another Zack Snyder film ever. I have not seen Justice League. And I have not seen the majority of Batman v Superman. You killed Jimmy Olsen. I don't want to watch the rest of your film. That's just how I feel. You don't understand the source material. You don't understand the importance of this character. And I don't want to be your friend if you don't understand the importance of Jimmy Olsen. So it's one of those things where, Zack Snyder might have thought he was being cool or whatever, but he just really showed to me how much he didn't understand this world or the importance of this character or the importance of Superman's pal. With that said, there have been many various interpretations of Superman. We've gotten the Dean Cain Superman, which was important to me when it was airing. That was my Superman as a kid. I was, I don't think it holds up. The special effects are not particularly impressive. But it's I will say this: go back and watch Superman versus the Mole Men. There is a moment where George Reeves' Superman is explaining to these hicks of the importance of sovereignty of life and why I'm not going to let you just execute someone that you don't understand. It's a brilliant speech. I think it needs to be repeated from time to time, especially with some of the political shenanigans that are being spewed today. It is always wise to remember that we are one species on one planet, regardless of borders and regardless of just treat people fairly, treat people like humans. Be the person that Superman would be proud of. It's not that hard. Treat your fellow man with respect and dignity like he is a human being. Those are the things that Superman has taught me. Those are the things that I'm going to go to my deathbed knowing I lived a good life because I listened to what this moral figure had to say to me when I was a kid. A lot of Christians will say, Jesus loves me, this I know because the Bible tells me so. Well, that's all good and dandy, but you're telling me that immigrants aren't good enough to come in your country when your savior was an immigrant. Superman would do the right thing. Sorry, I got a little heated there. I've had this discussion several times. Why do these characters matter? Why, in the grand scheme of reality, why do these characters even matter? Superman All-Star. There is a scene where a young lady is about to, take her own life. And she throws her phone off a building. She's getting ready to take the step. And Superman just comes out of the shadows behind her. And he goes, "Don't do it. don't do it. Your life matters. You matter. You're important. People love you. People care about you. And for a good hunk of the audience out there reading this book who might have been thinking about self-harm, who might have been thinking about, why am I doing this? Why am I even existing? All of a sudden, Superman was looking right down the page, talking directly to that reader and saying, your life matters. You matter. You are loved. That is why Superman matters. Because unlike any other comic book character, when he says something, when this fictional character says, it affects real world people. They put out a comic book decades ago instructing kids in war-torn countries about the dangers of landmines. And that comic book helped save children's lives in real life because Superman was telling them what to look out for. That's power. That is, I don't want to watch a Superman movie where he destroys half the city and ultimately kills Zod. I want to watch a Superman movie where the dignity and the integrity of that character is respected, and my fandom is respected in the last big anthology that they produced, like Action Comics 1000 or whatever it was. There is a nod to George Reeves' Superman versus the Mole Men. If you've never seen the movie, fine. It's just a panel in a comic book. But in that moment, my fandom was being rewarded because this is something that, thank you. You didn't have to, do that, but you did it. And for an old fan like me, that meant the world because you were paying respect to the versions of this character that I grew up watching. With that said, this one got a little out of hand. But Superman is a character that means a lot to me. I have the art portfolio from the original Christopher Reeve Superman movie. I've seen all the animated movies. Superman versus the Elite is the definitive best Superman cartoon ever made, hands down. If you think it's something else, you're wrong. But this character means the world to me, and I'm going to do my best to ring that bell and hopefully tell the next generation of why Superman is cool. So there you have it. Ba, 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 ba. This is my Superman statue. It's based off the Flesher. It's closer to the Flesher Superman design. There's a Lois Lane that goes with this that I'm every once in a while I hop on eBay trying to find. Um, but what's a Saturday morning cartoon character or figure that you believe should have gotten a statue but probably never did, or if it was, it just didn't. Like I mean, they're now making gargoyle toys again, uh, but there should have been like a really well sculpted Goliath somewhere along the ways. So, but what's one of your favorite Saturday morning cartoons that never really got the memorabilia or push that it should have?